Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Dr. Mubashira. I welcome you all to my channel. In this video, I will discuss with you recent Gold 2025 report which is released a couple of months ago. In the Gold report of 2025, there have been a lot of changes. In this video, I will compile all the new changes so that you will have a fresh perspective and you don't need to refer back to the old Gold guidelines of 2024 to see what is changed. The key changes in Gold Report 2025 is that approximately 164 new references have been added. A chapter of COVID-19 and COPD has been completely removed in 2025 document. So there are total 5 chapters. Chapter 1 is Definition and Overview. Chapter 2 is Diagnosis and Assessment. Chapter 3 is Prevention and Management of COPD. Chapter 4 Management of Exacerbation. And Chapter 5 is about COPD and comorbidities. Actually, Gold 2025 report is an update of Gold 2023 report, which was a major revision. The key sections which are updated include spirometry, algorithm for follow-up, and pharmacological management, an overview of the evidence pharmacotherapy. The aim of Gold 2025 report is to provide a non-biased review of current evidence for assessment, diagnosis, and treatment of patients with COPD. It has a focus on treatment objectives, which include symptom relief and reduce the risk of adverse health events, for example, exacerbation of COPD. In other words, it focuses on both short-term and long-term impact of COPD. At an individual level, FEV1 alone is an unreliable marker of severity of breathlessness, exercise limitation, impairment of health status, and risk of exacerbation. So do not use spirometry measures alone to determine the strategy of treatment and course of action. FEV1 alone is not a risk factor of morbidity, mortality, and exacerbation or impairment of health status in COPD patients. It only measures lung capacity. For example, a patient with FEV1 of, let's suppose, 70% may have increased number of exacerbation than a patient of COPD with FEV1 of, suppose, 40%. COPD is one of the 3 leading causes of death now worldwide and is a major cause of chronic morbidity and mortality throughout the world. Now let's talk about the definition of COPD. COPD is a heterogeneous lung condition characterized by chronic respiratory symptoms, for example, dyspnea, cough, sputum production, and exacerbation due to abnormalities of airway, for example, bronchitis or bronchiolitis, and alveolar abnormalities, for example, emphysema that cause persistent progressive airflow obstruction. Now let's talk about causes and risk factors of COPD. They have retained the etiology of COPD, that is genomics. Genomics means that there are genetic causes, that is SERPINA1 gene, environmental interactions, for example tobacco, pollution, and lifetime which determines the damage to the lungs. It means that all the exposures which occur to a person in their life starting from childhood will decide whether COPD will occur or not. Most common environmental factors which cause COPD include tobacco smoking, toxic particles, biomass fuel, and gases from indoor and outdoor air pollution. Now let's talk about diagnostic criteria of COPD. It has certain changes this time. Now it states that symptoms and exposure to risk factors determines that the patient has COPD. So, it is a clinical diagnosis, but we must have a non-fully reversible airflow obstruction with FEV1 FBC ratio less than 0.7. Then it will be a confirmed diagnosis. Then there is a pre-bronchodilator spirometry, which is the initial test to investigate whether symptomatic patients have airflow obstruction or not. It is similar to the last year statement, that is 2024 guidelines, which state that post-bronchodilator spirometry is not essential if pre-bronchodilator spirometry is normal. unless there is very high clinical suspicion of COPD. So if a patient has pre-bronchodilator ratio of less than zero point 0.7 and you do post-bronchodilator spirometry and it is normal or more than zero point 0.7, then these patients have a risk of development of COPD in future. They should be followed up regularly, and according to the guidelines, they do not hold the criteria of COPD. So a post-bronchodilator value will not be assessed if pre-bronchodilator spirometry is normal in the first go. If you are suspecting COPD, you will repeat the spirometry at regular intervals and confirm the diagnosis with a post bronchodilator reading, which, according to 2025 guidelines, is very important and should be less than zero point 0.7 as a cutoff. Then there are certain terminologies. Early COPD. This terminology has been given a lot of emphasis in GOLD 2025 report. It is difficult to diagnose early COPD. It is the first step of disease formation. Mild COPD. Mild COPD is not a marker of COPD, that is early COPD. It can occur at any age. It may or may not progress, and mild COPD is usually in regards of symptoms rather than FEV1 value. Young COPD relates to the age of the patient. If a patient is less than 50 years old, we can say that he has young COPD. There may be positive family history. The next terminology is pre-COPD. It can also occur at any age. Here, respiratory symptoms and structural lung defects are present without airflow obstruction on forced spirometry. The patient may or may not develop COPD. These patients will usually have FEV1 FVC ratio of more than zero point 0.7 post bronchodilation and have normal lung capacity. Now let's talk about PRISM. PRISM was introduced in GOLD 2024 statement. It means preserve ratio impaired spirometry. Again, it states that if the ratio is more than zero point 0.7, we do not call it COPD. Here, post-bronchodilator FEV1 or FAC may be less than 80%, but the ratio is more than zero point 0.7. That is, FEV1 FAC is more than zero point 0.7. This patient will be in PRISM. These patients need to be followed up because there are 20 to 30% chances of these patients to be transformed to COPD. This prism is seen in active as well as ex-smokers, both high and low BMI, female gender, obesity, and comorbidities. These patients have increased cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. The prevalence of PRISM is 7.1 to 11% of the population. This data is included in 2025 guidelines. Now let's talk about asthma with COPD. We all have heard about asthma COPD overlap terminology. Adults with asthma have 12-fold higher risk of COPD over time compared to non-asthmatic smokers. So history of asthma is very important. European Community Respiratory Health Survey states that patients with hyperresponsiveness of airway and asthma have 15% increased risk of COPD, and those patients who are asthmatics plus smokers, they have 39% increased risk of COPD. Now let's talk about chronic bronchitis. Its definition stays the same, that is, chronic cough and sputum production for at least 3 months per year for 3 consecutive years. Its primary risk factor is smoking. However, 4 to 22% of patients of chronic bronchitis are non smokers. Inhalation exposure, for example, dust, biomass fuel, chemicals, and cooking, is important risk factor. Now, what is the pathophysiology of COPD? Pathophysiology includes inflammatory changes, dysbiosis, and structural changes. Systemic inflammation, comorbidities, and oxidative stress adds to it. Now, what is dysbiosis? It refers to the disruption of microbiome which has been observed in COPD patients. It plays an important role in development and progression of COPD. Now, what is the taxonomy of COPD? It includes etiotypes of COPD which comprise of genetically determined COPD due to alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, and other genetic variants with smaller effects acting in combination. COPD due to abnormal lung development, early life events including premature birth and low birth weight, among others. Environmental COPD, that is cigarette smoking COPD, and biomass and pollution exposure COPD, that is due to exposure to tobacco smoke, including in utero or via passive smoking, vaping or e-cigarette use, and cannabis, and exposure to household pollution, ambient air pollution, wildfire smoke, and occupational hazards. Then there is COPD due to infections, that is childhood infections, tuberculosis associated COPD, and HIV associated COPD. COPD and asthma, particularly childhood asthma, and COPD of unknown cause. Now, this was all about chapter 1. Now, let's talk about chapter 2. It includes diagnosis and assessment of COPD. It has certain changes in 2025 Gold Report. There has been some changes in the flow chart with a little more detail. Clinical indicators for consideration of diagnosis of COPD is the same as 2023 guidelines, and causes of chronic cough, both intrathoracic and extrathoracic, are also the same as like 2023 report, which are actually the differential diagnosis of COPD patients. Intrathoracic causes of chronic cough includes asthma, lung cancer, tuberculosis, bronchiectasis, left heart failure, interstitial lung disease, cystic fibrosis, and idiopathic cough. And extrathoracic causes of chronic cough includes chronic allergic rhinitis, post-nasal drip syndrome, upper airway cough syndrome, gastroesophageal reflux, and medications, for example, ACE inhibitors. In diagnosis, there is a lot of emphasis on post-bronchodilator FEV1 FVC ratio being less than 0.7 that I mentioned before as well. This cutoff ratio of less than 0.7 can result in overdiagnosis in elderly patients who have lung function decline due to age. Pre and post bronchodilator spirometry. This table is a new addition in 2025 report of Gold. It states that whenever you are suspecting a patient of COPD, you need to measure the pre-bronchodilator FEV1 FVC ratio first. If a person has normal FEV1 FVC ratio that is more than or equal to zero point 0.7, then he is not a COPD patient. However, if pre-bronchodilator ratio is less than zero point 0.7, it means that this patient has airflow obstruction. Then you go ahead and do post-bronchodilator FEV1 FVC measurement. If the ratio comes out to be less than zero point 0.7, it is confirmed COPD. But if the patient has ratio of more than zero point 0.7, this patient needs regular follow-up and repeated assessment. According to 2025 report, the pre and post bronchodilator FEV1 value is not needed for the degree of obstruction. This is a new change. It was not present in old Gold report. As I mentioned before, that FEV1 is no longer a marker of severity and degree of obstruction and diagnosis because it varies in a single individual person over a period of time, and it does not tell us long-term prediction of treatment. Another very important thing is that it is not necessary to stop inhaled medications before obtaining spirometry measures during follow-up. COPD screening is recommended in only target population, not in everyone. It is recommended in 50 to 80 years old age group with more than 20 pack year smoking history. Annual low dose helical CT scan imaging of chest is recommended to diagnose lung cancer earlier. Spirometry is also done annually in such patients. Now let's talk about gold grades and severity of airflow obstruction in COPD patients based on post-bronchodilator FEV1. It is divided into Gold 1, Gold 2, Gold 3 and 4 based on FEV1. Gold 1 is mild and FEV1 is more than or equal to 80% predicted. Gold 2 is moderate COPD with FEV1 between 50 to 80% of predicted. Gold 3 is severe COPD with FEV1 30 to 50%, and Gold 4 is very severe with FEV1 of less than 30% of predicted. Severity of airflow obstruction is different from severity of disease. As I told you before that FEV1 is not a marker of severity of COPD. Instead, it is a marker of severity of airflow obstruction. So it is better to call it GOLD 1, 2, 3 or 4 rather than mild, moderate and severe COPD. Another modality which can be used for assessment of COPD includes MMRC dyspnea scale and CAT assessment. Another biomarker that has been talked about a lot in GOLD Guideline 2025 are blood eosinophil count. It is recommended to guide the use of inhaled corticosteroid. It is used as a biomarker with clinical assessment, but it cannot be used as a predictor of risk of exacerbation. The whole chapter 5 is about COPD and comorbidities. It states that cardiovascular disease risk is increased in patients with clinically stable COPD and it is a major cause of death. It should be investigated in COPD patients. Chapter 4 of GOLD Report 2025 includes exacerbation of COPD and its treatment. It states that other important differentials of cardiovascular disease should be ruled out in exacerbation of COPD, for example, congestive cardiac failure and pulmonary embolism. It also says that markers of exacerbation, like for example for cardiac disease such as troponin levels, BNP levels, and pro-BNP levels are important because you should rule out heart failure component as well. Since mortality from COPD is mainly due to cardiovascular disease, that's why if it is seen, it should be managed on urgent basis. Another point that the GOLD 2025 report states that if a cardiac patient needs beta blockers and has COPD as well, he should be prescribed and he should not be denied a beta blocker which can be prescribed to him keeping in mind risk versus benefit. Now this is the table Gold ABE assessment tool. It is retained and is same as 2023 and has not been changed. So patients who have 0 or 1 exacerbation not needing hospitalization, they should be in A and B. Their MMRC is still 1 and CAT score is less than 10. And patients who have hospitalization for more than one time will be in E category. Gold 1 has FEV1 more than 80, Gold 2 50 to 79, Gold 3 30 to 49 and Gold 4 has less than 30. And post bronchodilator ratio must be less than zero point 0.7. Chapter 3 is about prevention and management of COPD. Now this is the table which shows goals for treatment of stable COPD. There are mainly two goals: reduce symptoms, improve exercise tolerance and improve the health status of patient. And the second goal is reduce risk, prevent disease progression, prevent and treat exacerbations and reduce mortality. This is the table which is showing initial pharmacological treatment and management of COPD patients. It states that if there are more than or equal to 2 exacerbations or more than or equal to 1 exacerbation leading to hospitalization, this patient will be in group E and he will be treated with LABA plus LAMA. If blood eosinophil count is more than or equal to 300, then consider LABA plus LAMA plus ICS, that is inhaled corticosteroid. However, if there is 0 or 1 exacerbation which is not leading to hospital admission, then this patient will be either in group A or group B. MMRC score in group A will be 0 to 1 and CAT score will be less than 10 and this patient will be treated with a bronchodilator. However, in group B, MMRC score will be 2 or more than 2 and CAT score will be 10 or more than 10 and this patient will be treated with LABA plus LAMA. Now, this is a new addition in 2025 Gold Report, that is management of patients currently on LABA plus ICS. So these patients are assessed if there is no current exacerbation and previous positive treatment response, then plan is continued treatment. However, if there is no relevant exacerbation history, consider changing to LABA plus LAMA. But if the patient who is currently on LABA plus ICS and there are current exacerbations, Then we order blood eosinophil count. If the blood eosinophil count come out to be less than 100 per microliter, then consider LABA plus ICS changing to LABA plus LAMA. And if blood eosinophil count come out to be equal or more than 100 per microliter, then consider escalating to LABA plus LAMA plus ICS. Then this table is about identify and reduce the risk factor exposure. This is about smoking cessation. So the steps are practical counseling for smoking cessation, social support of family and friends, and first line pharmacotherapy for smoking cessation, which includes varenicline, nortriptyline, nicotine nasal spray, and nicotine patches. This is a table for brief strategies to help the patient willing to quit smoking. Ask, advise, assess, assist, and arrange. Now, this is a new edition in Gold 2025 report Climate Change and COPD. Here they talk about how weather events, for example, heat waves, severe winter, floods, droughts, hurricane, and storm, etc., can affect a COPD patient, and they are at increased risk of death due to both cold and heat exposure. There is also increased risk of hospitalization with high and low outdoor temperature. Vaccination for stable COPD. It is also a bit changed in the new report. Patients with COPD should receive all recommended vaccinations in line with relevant local guidelines. That is yearly influenza vaccine and COVID-19 vaccination based on WHO and CDC updated recommendations. Either one dose of 21-valent pneumococcal conjugate vaccine or one dose pneumococcal vaccine 20 as recommended by CDC. Pneumococcal vaccination has been shown to reduce the incidence of community-acquired pneumonia and exacerbation for the people with COPD. Respiratory syncytial virus vaccination for individuals who are more than or equal to 60 years with or without chronic heart disease or chronic lung disease, as recommended by CDC. DTaP and DTPA vaccination to protect against pertussis, that is whooping cough, for people with COPD that were not vaccinated in adolescence, as recommended by CDC, and zoster vaccine to protect against shingles for patients with COPD more than 50 years old, as recommended by CDC. Now, this is the table which is showing management cycle. That is, you review the symptoms of the patient of COPD, such as dyspnea and exacerbation, assess for inhaler technique and adherence, and non pharmacological approaches, which include pulmonary rehabilitation and self management education, and adjust, either escalate or de escalate. This table shows follow-up pharmacological treatment. If a patient has dyspnea and he is taking LABA or LAMA, consider adding LABA plus LAMA. And if the patient comes with exacerbation and he is taking LABA or LAMA, then you check for blood eosinophil levels. If the levels are less than 300, you consider adding LABA plus LAMA. But if the blood eosinophil level are more than 300, then you give LABA plus LAMA plus ICS. However, if a patient is taking LABA plus LAMA plus ICS and still there are exacerbations, then you have different options. Number one, roflumilast, FEV1 less than 50% and patient is chronic bronchitis. So this is one option. And another is azithromycin, which is given in former smokers. If the blood eosinophil count is more than or equal to 300, then dupilumab, which is given in chronic bronchitis patients. Ensifentrine. It is a new addition in recent advancement of COPD. It is a novel inhaled dual inhibitor of phosphodiesterase 3 and phosphodiesterase 4. It is anti-inflammatory and has bronchodilator effect. It is delivered by jet nebulizer and it improves pulmonary function test and symptoms of the patient but has inconsistent effect on quality of life. That's why it is not added in the previous table. It is only available in USA. Oxygen therapy, that is long-term oxygen therapy and ventilatory support, is also a treatment option for COPD patients. Prescription of supplemental oxygen in COPD patients. Arterial hypoxemia is defined as partial pressure of oxygen less than or equal to 55 mm of mercury or 7.3 kilopascal, or saturation of oxygen is less than 88%. At this level, you prescribe supplemental oxygen and titrate to keep the saturation more than or equal to 90%. Usually, the saturation target in COPD patients is 88 to 92%. Then you recheck in 60 to 90 days to assess if supplemental oxygen is still indicated and if prescribed supplemental oxygen is effective. Palliative care, end of life care, and hospice care in COPD patients. All clinicians managing patients with COPD should be aware of the effectiveness of palliative approaches to symptom control and use these in their practice. End of life care should include discussion with the patient and their families about their views on resuscitation, advance directive, and place of death preference. Opiates, neuromuscular, electrical stimulation, oxygen, and fan blowing air onto the face can relieve breathlessness. Nutritional supplementation should be considered in malnourished patients with COPD as it may improve respiratory muscle strength and overall health status. Fatigue can be improved by self management education, pulmonary rehabilitation, nutritional support, and mind body interventions. Thank you so much. Stay blessed. Allah Hafiz.